Elijah and Elisha. We're winding down. I think we just have one more series. I'm not saying one more lesson, because this is page 2 of this section on Elisha experiences the God of angel armies. Last week we talked about the God who sees and the God who protects. And today we're going to go on with this story and talk about the God who shows mercy. The God who shows mercy. We're in the middle of this story, and what has happened in the story is that the king of Syria is trying to attack Israel. He's actually coming and wanting to make raids against Israel. But everywhere he goes, he wants to find the army and secretly attack them, make a surprise attack. They get there and there's no army there, or they're ready for them. They're just not there. And he says to his servants, he says, who's telling? Who's the spy among us? This is in 2 Kings 6. Who is the spy telling the enemy, I'm coming, so they're not there? And one of his servants says, well, nobody. It's that they have the prophet Elisha. And the prophet tells them even what you speak in your bedroom. And that's why. And the king in all his wisdom says, well, let's catch that guy. Do you understand? The guy knows you're coming. Anyway, he sends his army and they surround the city of Dothan, where Elisha and his servant are. But God has sent his army too. And so when the servant of Elisha gets up and looks outside, he sees the army of the Syrians surrounding the city. And he says, oh no, what are we going to do? He's panicking. And Elisha says, don't worry. There are more with us than are with the enemy. What do you mean? And he says, he asks the Lord to open his servant's eyes so he can see the reality that Elisha knows or sees. And so God opens his eyes, and he sees an army of chariots and horses of fire surrounding the army of the physical army of the Syrians. So that's where we left off. We talked about 6 million things to do with that. So now, the God who shows mercy, we're going to start in verse 18. And when the Syrians came down against him, now the Syrians, not knowing they're surrounded by an army of fire, they come down to get Elijah. Okay, that's what's happening. They've now been surrounding, now they're coming in. Elijah prayed to the Lord and said, please strike this people with blindness. So he struck them with blindness in accordance with the prayer of Elisha. And Elisha said to them, this is not the way, and this is not the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. And he led them to Samaria. As soon as they entered Samaria, Elisha said, O Lord, open the eyes of these men, that they may see. So the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. As soon as the king of Israel, whose name, by the way, was King Joram, saw them, he said to Elisha, my father, shall I strike them down? Shall I strike them down? He answered, you shall not strike them down. Would you strike down those whom you have taken captive with your sword and with your bow? Set bread and water before them, that they may eat and drink and go to their master. So he, the king, prepared for them a great feast. And when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away, and they went to their master. Don't miss this. And the Syrians did not come again on raids into the land of Israel. They defeated them with kindness. First off, the Syrians come, and Elisha asked God to strike them with blindness. I find it interesting, and I think God sometimes shows his sense of humor or his creativity, because he just prayed to open the eyes of his servant. Now he's praying that God will shut the eyes of the Syrians. And it's not a full blindness, I don't believe. I think blindness is not complete in this case, but selective, which is your blank. It's not complete. Now, why do I think that? First off, they appear not to be aware that they are blind. Lily, I know that you struggle with blindness, mostly blindness. Could you have that without being aware of it?
Yeah, well, you can't see.
You notice, yeah. Yeah. Well, what I believe God did, I don't think they're completely blind. We don't find Elisha having to, okay, all of you hold hands, do the kindergarten thing. Let's get a long rope here. We got a whole army. Got to have them all on a rope holding on so they can walk to the... We don't find any... He just says, this isn't the right place. This isn't the right place. I'll take you to who you want to see. They want to see him. So it's selective. They don't appear to be aware that they're blind. Secondly, they converse with Elisha, but they don't recognize him. He's the one they came to get. They don't recognize him. So God has blinded them to who it is. And thirdly, they don't recognize this is their enemy. They are walking, they are on their way to the middle of their enemy's city. I think they would recognize, you know what, we're on our way to Samaria. Why is he leading us to Samaria? They don't even notice. It's a blindness to awareness that it appears God has done. And that is what I believe Elisha wanted. I don't think he wanted an army of blind people to take care of. So he leads them. I just want to point out, sin is often like this kind of blindness. Sin is often like this kind of blindness. Here's what why I say that. We don't see sin for the evil it really is. We don't see sin is as evil as it is. In their case, it isn't evil they don't see. They don't see that this is the very one they're looking for. They don't see that they are not aware. They don't even know it. And I think that sin blinds us sometimes, and we don't see how evil it is. By the way, it's sin and evil are the two blanks there, Betty. By the way, if sin looked as evil as it is, would it tempt us? No. It tempts us because it doesn't look as evil as it is. We're blinded by human nature, by the way Satan presents the sin. Somehow we get this blindness. And our loved ones, and we get frustrated. Don't they see? Don't they see how this is messing them up? They're blind to it, like these men were. Also, sometimes we don't see that Satan is the one we're following. Sin is like this because they didn't realize they're following. Here, follow me, I'll take you to the man you want. And they're following the man they want. Sin, we don't even realize it's Satan we're following. We don't see Satan is the one we're following. That's the problem with sin. We don't recognize the source. We don't recognize that we're messing with, when we're staying connected or getting connected to sin, we're messing with the father of sin himself. If they knew it was Elisha leading them, they would have had a different reaction. If we know sometimes, if we would recognize it's Satan, this is of the devil, this is not God. Tuesday on the way to class at the college, Bible college, I was going over my notes like I do, and I had this whole idea. I'm going to do it sometime. I'm going to teach a lesson. I've had 2 chances to teach since, but one. I taught last night at church. I taught the Bible study, but I didn't feel I should do this one. But I have this idea to teach this lesson on things God will never tell you. So if someone's telling you this, it isn't God. And I think sometimes if we knew this is what you're being tempted to do and it's Satan tempting you, want to do it? We'd never do it. And that's the blindness that sin puts us in. We don't recognize the evil of sin. We don't recognize the father of sins that is presenting it to us. And thirdly, we don't see that sin is leading us into a trap. We don't see that sin is leading us into a trap. Sometimes it isn't the sin at first, it's where it's taking us. I think if we can teach our children when they're making decisions, you have to think beyond right now. You have to think beyond what you think you want immediately and recognize that this will lead to this. You are starting down this path. Don't just look at the path, look at where the path leads, because that's where you're going to end up. And this is why sin is so powerful, is because of this deception. That we don't know how evil it is, we don't recognize it's from Satan, and we don't realize we're being led into a trap. Let me warn you about sin with a well-known saying. I went online to find out who said this. And I can tell you it's from many choices that claim it in little different forms, but the basic idea. Ravi Zacharias, K. Arthur. I was trying to find the ultimate who said this. I think it's it's a good statement, but it's not something you can patent. It's just so real. And here it is. Pastor Gabe said it the other night. Sin will take you farther than you meant to go. Sin will take you farther, there's your words, take you farther than you meant to go. Keep you longer than you meant to stay. And cost you more than you meant to pay. Maybe this is what we should teach our children about sin as they're growing up. Say, remember, so they look at the fact that it will have longer effects. Here it is. Sin will take you farther than you meant to go, keep you longer than you meant to stay, and cost you more than you meant to pay. Isn't that true about sin? James 1:13-15 says, let no one say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death. We're enticed by sin, and we may even recognize this is a sin, but we never intended for it to go as far as we go, as long as we stayed, and cost as much as we paid. I found an interesting thing while I was looking up who said that. Try replacing the words. An interesting exercise. Replace sin with some other words. Try this. Smoking will take you farther than you meant to go, keep you longer than you meant to stay, and cost you more than you meant to pay. Drinking will take you farther than you meant to go, keep you longer than you meant to stay, cost you more than you meant to pay. Drugs will take you farther than you meant to go, keep you longer than you meant to stay, cost you more than you meant to pay. Isn't that amazing? It works with a lot of things. Stealing. People who steal. Stealing will take you farther than you meant to go, keep you longer than you meant to stay, and cost you more than you meant to pay. Gossip? Yeah. Gossip will take you farther than you meant to go, keep you longer. That's the one we forget, that it's not easy to get rid of. Keep you longer than you meant to go, cost you more than you meant to pay. Meant to stay, I should say. Flirting. Watch out. Especially women who work in a workplace with a lot of men, watch out. Flirting will take you farther than you meant to go, keep you longer than you meant to stay, and cost you more than you meant to pay. Gambling. Gambling will take you farther than you meant to go, keep you longer than you meant to stay, cost you more than you meant to pay. Video game. I mean, you can go on forever, and it's a good way to look at something. This thing that I'm getting involved in, is it going to keep me longer, take me further than I meant to go, keep me longer than I meant to stay, and cost me more than I meant to pay? Watch out. Isn't that an interesting little way to think of it? Now that I said it 75 times, I think I have it memorized. What? Saying this statement over and over took me farther than I meant to go, kept me longer than I meant to stay, and cost me more than I meant to pay. Everything works. Oh, that the good things would do that. Isn't that sad? Reading my Bible took me further than I meant to go, kept me longer than I meant to stay, cost me more than I meant to pay. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. That's a good test. Is this a good thing? Let me see if it works in the statement. Watching TV soap operas. There we go. Watching soap operas took me further than I wanted to go, meant to go, kept me longer than I meant to stay, cost me more than I meant to pay. Did you buy clothes to go to the wedding on the soap opera? I hope not. Okay. By the way, going back to our story, Elijah didn't lie to these people. He did take them to the man they wanted to see, because ultimately he was still with them. He brought them to the man they sought, but in another city. He said, this isn't the right city. No, this isn't where I want you to see me. I want you to see me in a different city. So let's go. When they entered Samaria, their eyes were open. Now, how that, I don't think they were blind until they got there. I think this selective blindness was lifted. And they were able to see where they were. They recognized they were in Samaria, where their enemies were. But now, while they were still coming, I imagine the king of Samaria, or the king Joram, who was in Samaria, put his army around this army coming. Why are they, can you imagine seeing them come in? They're not really blind. They're just walking in. We're following that man. This is our enemy. This is the weirdest invasion ever. And I imagine the king put his army nearby to watch what these guys would do. So they open their eyes, and now they're surrounded. And they're in the capital city of their enemy. So King Joram, it doesn't say his name here, but from other references we know that's who's king right now. King Joram, I want you to know he is the son of Ahab and Jezebel. What a heritage. The most evil king and queen ever in biblical history, in Israel's history. And his first thing is, should we kill him? Notice that is his go-to response. You know, we have go-to responses that have been built into us. If you don't know you have it, you probably have it worse. You don't know that you have something, that's what you go to. Something bad happens, maybe you panic, or you call somebody certain, or you do pray. That would be a good go-to response. Well, his go-to response is, should we kill him? And I want to talk a little bit about go-to responses and what we're so used to. And here's the point. When we are regularly exposed to violence as a response, when we are regularly exposed, I make my living with my mouth, hard to believe, isn't it? When we are regularly exposed to violence as a response, we tend to respond violently too. Now, there's a reason I changed the wording I had in there from when we are exposed to people who are violent, and I'll explain that. I want us to see that there's this exposure. If you grew up with a yelling mother, you probably are a yelling mother, a shouter. Unless you fought it and decided, and you have a husband who's helped you see let's not respond that way to our children. But it's not easy to overcome because you grew up with that kind of response. It's a mild violence supposedly, but I mean it's that it could be a violent explosion of words. If you grew up with people just hitting, then you probably struggle with that. If you grew up with running away every time something gets before you can handle, just leave the room. If whatever was the way things were handled, you have a tendency to go to that. Joram grew up with parents who killed people they didn't want. Oh, I want that vineyard. He pouted first. And then his wife says, you're the king, just get it. And she arranged to kill the man to get the vineyard, as we know. That's their response. We can't have it. What are you talking about? Just kill whoever has it and take it. And Joram's first go-to response is violence, is killing. And we need to be aware. Listen to this proverb, Proverbs 22:24-25. This is a reason to watch out with who we associate with and what kind of people we are in front of our children. Make no friendship with a man given to anger, nor go with a wrathful man, lest you learn his ways and entangle yourself in a snare. Now, some of us think that proverb should end differently, and we're going along, make no friendship with a man given to anger, he might attack you. This isn't warning about that. This isn't telling us, watch out because now they're going to attack you. They're saying you're going to become like them. You are going to also respond in anger. And then you'll be ensnared in that kind of response. And so the same thing is an encouragement. If you are raising children, be careful how you are responding because they are going to do it. I'm not asking for hands, but some of these women now see in their grown children how they responded to things. I'm free of that because I don't have any children. So that's why I can preach it. No. It's a very important to control and to learn, to look at how am I responding, because I'm teaching my children to respond the same, whether I want to or not. And if we would have anger, it follows with anger. Yes.
It goes towards a lot of personality traits. I had a friend who, she questioned everything and she'd call all her friends, and what does this mean? And what does that mean? This happened. And what happened? 6 years of friendship with her and I turned into her. And I seriously had to distance myself from her and force myself not to be that person.
It isn't just our children either. Whoever we are exposing ourselves to on a regular basis, we start picking up being like them. Yes, Mary.
My dad was like that. Young. And I remember when I was little, I grew up young. I did not say anything to my brothers.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Mary. It's just too far. Uh-huh.
I grew up yelling at my daughter, and now she knows young, just like what I did. And all the time I hear her, and you're talking about that, I feel so bad because I put that in her, but I didn't know it.
Let me tell you, if you are in a spot of where you realize you've received by the exposure, she released herself from the connection, and if it was your childhood and you're saying, that's why I'm responding the way I am because of how my dad or how my mom, then I believe God can heal that if we look to him and we look to his word for how to respond instead. If you are concerned about your children, God can help you change even right away. Perhaps ask forgiveness and tell them you want to work at a better way to respond in situations. We just look at a couple things here to remember. Watch out even for too many violent movies and video games. They can entangle children in the snare of anger. I'm saying specifically anger, not, and violence too. But what they see in these videos is the response is somebody bothers them. They show it on the face of the characters. They're angry, and their response is anger, shoot. Anger, kick. Am I right? So be very, very careful, because it is not that the children are necessarily going to go shoot up a school, but are they going to have as their reaction or their response to stress or situations that they don't like with anger expressed in some way that is not healthy. Anger will take you farther than you meant to go, keep you longer than you meant to stay, and cost you more than you meant to pay. It's hard to overcome an angered response lifestyle. It's how we are once we get in that spot. And that's what it means by keeping us longer than we want to stay. And it will cost us. It can cost us in relationships. It can cost us in how we harm our children with their futures. We need to get God's forgiveness and release and freedom from that anger. And it may take some time, because we've seen it, like Joram. That's what we've seen. So this is a warning. Evaluate. Do I need to change the way? Do I like the way I respond? What's my go-to? How can I look to God to change that? Remember, everyone in our church has access to Right Now media. Someone was telling me, I know Virginia uses it extensively, and her children. What is it you were telling me your kids want to watch all the time? It's her kids want to watch this children's Christian programming, and what a great thing. What a great thing. And she says, told me she was watching this teaching on this topic, on Right Now Media, on this topic, on this. You can find so many things that might help. Or ask for it. Or just start searching your Bible. I go to a place called Open Bible. I don't know if it's .org or .com, but it's Open Bible, and in topics they have, and you can search. How I find verses on all these topics. And you're like, how does she find these verses? Yeah, I go there and it says verses on this topic, and I'll put anger, and it gave me all these verses. It just doesn't give me the reference. It tells the verse so I can quickly see, oh, that's good, I like that. Or on unforgiveness for my teaching last night. And so use these resources or ask for help. Yes, but my go-to response is not asking for help. You might have to change and get help. Yes, Susie.
Oh, I bought my mom a book, and it came back to me, a book called Prayers That Avail Much. So it's the same
idea.
Yes.
Yeah, so do something. If you know you have this issue, if you try, maybe talk to your spouse if they know you have it. Talk to a spiritual friend that can help you look for how to conquer this, because we don't want to influence others with that. We don't want to live that way ourselves. So Elijah treated them, instead of as King Joram's captives, he realized, I'm going to treat them as my captives. And he said, give them bread and water and send them home. Now, this is like a high point for Joram. He's never as good as this again. He responds. He tells him to give him bread and water. I think he gave him much more. I never have heard bread and water referred to as a feast. I mean, some of those sweet bread like Danishes, okay. But water? Yeah, if it's got a tea bag in it. Yeah. So it's called a feast. So Joram went a step further. He prepared for them a great feast. And they went home, and sure enough, they stopped raiding. He could have killed him. He could have killed him. That was his response. But guess what would have happened? The king would have sent another army back and forth, and they would have had retaliation instead of rest because of their kindness. It is difficult for even an enemy, it's difficult for an enemy to come against someone who is treating them kindly. Have you ever been mad at someone and then they're so nice to you, you can't stay mad? Then you're really mad, right? No. I had these two little girls at camp. They were sisters. And please never do this. Their mother put them in the same suitcase. I don't mean in the suitcase. Kids walk up there. But they pack their stuff in the same suitcase. They should have been maybe in the same. Anyway, we get up there and one of them was very good at caring for the other one was more messy. The younger one was named Christina. I can't remember the older one's name. But her younger sister was more reactive, responsive with getting mad or freaked out, you know. I've had some kids, they're so funny. They're like, when they're freaking out, they go, "I'm freaking out." They say those words. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess someone's told you that. Yo, I'm freaking out here. Okay, then. Anyway, she was all upset because something was messed up in their suitcase. And she went to her sister and she's like, "Rah, rah," whatever. And her sister, I don't know, she had such a great response. And she went like this. "Oh, Christina. And it calmed her sister right down, because if someone goes like that to you, it's hard to stay angry because they're just not responding like you want them to. And you know, when you're really being kind to someone, the Bible calls it this. Let's read this, Romans 12:20, and there'll be closing thoughts here. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For by so doing you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." Now, I know some of us jumped right up. You mean I can do this? And it'll be like they have coals of fire on their head. I'll do it. Well, let me explain the meaning. We have to take off our Western culture and move into the Hebraic or Hebrew culture and understand this. And so I've got a little explanation here as to explain this. To heap burning coals, the meaning of it. In ancient homes, there were no matchsticks or modern fire starters. The only fire they had was kept in a brazier of burning coals that they used for simple cooking or boiling water, as well as for providing warmth. This fire in the brazier was always kept burning throughout the day. However, if it should go out, a member of the family would take an empty brazier to a neighbor's house to borrow some coals of fire. She, the woman at the house, would then place the brazier filled with burning coals onto her head, because that's how they carried those, and headed home. Her head would not be burnt, as she used another basket or cloth turban to insulate the heat from the head. So it isn't that the burning coals burnt, and that's what that means. However, if her neighbor was a generous woman, she would heap her neighbor's brazier with loads of burning coals to make sure they got home and kept him going. So even though it cost her taking them out of her fire, she would heap them in order to be kind and generous to her neighbor. Therefore, heaping his or her empty brazier with hot coals is a good deed, like feeding an enemy with food and drink. This is supplying his needs through love and generous giving. So when this verse says, you know what you do, instead of treating your enemy like an enemy, treat them kindly. It'll be like giving them what they need. That kindness will keep them warm all the way home. And it can change them. And the Syrian army for this time stopped attacking. We have a way we say it, and it's much more violent. Kill them with kindness. It's saying the same thing, but much more violently. Do we have to include kill? I hope you've learned something today. I hope you've gleaned some thoughts. If you need help with an area, look to God's Word. Remember, we make sure everybody has a study Bible if they need one. And use Right Now Media. Here's how you sign up for Right Now Media. Go through the church app or the church website, mcathechurch.com or the MCA the Church app. It has Right Now Media in there. It tells you can sign up for it. When you sign up for it, when you click on it through our website or through our app, it gives you a free subscription. If you try to go directly to Right Now Media and sign up, you will have to pay for it. But we pay a monthly amount, a subscription, to make sure all our people can use it free. So go through mcathechurch.com or the MCA the Church app. I can help you with that if you need it, but not if it gets too confusing. Then we have to ask Adam or Ari. Let's close in prayer. Thank you, Lord, that you are such a forgiving God. When we have walked down, we have allowed sin to take us further, to keep us longer, to cost us more. You still, in your mercy, receive us back, and you want to help us and forgive us and help us to live more victorious lives with regard to sin. I pray, Lord, that we'll look to you to do that, that we will become people who don't respond in violence or anger, but respond as your Son did. Help us to follow his example more and more every day. In Jesus' name, amen.